Which struggles between you and Jesus has the most weight? Which feels the most intense? Let's talk about this question here today in the narrowing your focus section of the workbook. And we want to just take a moment to welcome everyone. You are listening to the Handing It to Jesus podcast. This is where you learn to trade your deepest struggles to God for peace. Let's start to jump in and answer this question. You are here with Matt Tilley and myself, Craig Faust. Hey, Matt.
Hey, good to see you, Craig.
It is good to see you as well. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this narrowing your focus. So I think that Matt and I were talking a little bit about this beforehand, and I think this is a little bit tricky because if you're someone that is outside the realm of different things like self-improvement, therapy, counseling, like all these kind of different arenas, then this may not be something that you're totally familiar with whenever you read this and you're like, what has the most weight? Mm-hmm. What's the most intense?
Sure. That can mean a lot of different things.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
We're kind of asking you all to perhaps notice this from a physical place. Mm-hmm. So we feel emotions in our body. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I don't realize that I'm anxious walking around my house, but I do notice that my jaw hurts. And whenever I realize that my jaw hurts, I open my jaw or I massage it, and I realize, oh, I'm clenching my jaw. That's why it's in pain. Why am I clenching my jaw? Oh, it's because I'm anxious or stressed out in this moment. And it tunes me in to the emotion that I'm feeling. But sometimes I first notice it because of a physical sensation in my body. Yeah. And so I think that when we're asking you to list all of the problems that you just listed in the section right before this, there's going to be one, maybe two, but maybe one in particular where you have a physical sensation in your body. Mm-hmm. You might struggle to feel a physical sensation. Maybe you're going to be more in tune with an emotional. Maybe you'll be more in tune with a spiritual weight. But I think a lot of us do wind up feeling some physical sensation when we are uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. And that's because, well, the way that God made us is He made us physical. He made us in a lot of different ways, but physical is a huge part of them. And when we feel emotions and when we have thoughts and when we are connected in spirit with the Lord, there's always a physical something happening.
Yeah. I love that example of like the clenched jaw. So you may be sitting here and you're like, I really don't like paying attention to my body, or it's not something I really do. Cool, right? Just recognize that about yourself. That means this thing that we're asking you to do, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to give yourself time. And time is something that is really important with this, and why we want to take a little bit of time here to actually speak more about it. So, in this discern section, as you're getting to narrowing your focus, like Matt said, so before this, as you're outlining the problem, you may have had a couple different problems that you listed down. Matt and I talked about ours, and, the way that I narrowed mine down is like I'm struggling to be a joyful giver. Is that whenever I was looking at it, this is the one that makes me feel the most like an imposter as a follower of Christ. This is the one that makes me feel like I'm failing my family the most. This is the one, like, for me, whenever I look at it, like I feel this sinking feeling in my gut. And like whenever I feel that sinking feeling in my gut, and I was looking at these other ones, they give me different sensations, totally. But as I looked at this one, I found my eyes gravitating back towards it every time. I found myself struggling with it. I would think about it more often. Mm-hmm. And so like, I would recommend that like, as you look at this list that you made and like the problem, like where you're just trying to kind of discern this problem, this thing that's keeping you from Jesus, this thing that's like, emphasizing this distance, that you look over them, take some time, read them, you could pray about them, but say it out loud is something that we actually have in that narrowing your focus. I think that's really important, right? Does your voice quiver, right? Is there one that you're avoiding a little more with your eye contact? notice how does your body respond to saying something like that out loud?
Yeah.
Because if it's hard for you to kind of like rationally and think about it and different things, your body is not going to have the same effect. It's not going to have the same response. Our body
Yep.
is the emotional outlet of what's happening for us mentally. And again, you may not be as tuned into your body, so give yourself time to expose yourself to it. You may have to repeat it several times.
Right. I would even suggest whenever it comes to describing something, because there's a power in being very observant of multiple things that we're feeling, or multiple thoughts that we have to observe. But then that next step is to describe in order for us to really be in touch with what we're feeling. So to perhaps even describe a physical sensation that you have in that moment when you list out some of those problems. And if you feel a weight somewhere or a tension or the butterflies in your stomach, whatever it is, name what that physical sensation is. Try to call it out right now if you're able to, or find a time later to be able to describe what it is that your body is actually going through right now.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. God may place on your heart, and God will place things on your heart. And not maybe necessarily in this manner, but this is definitely one in which God will do. All right. So like whenever I look through these, I may have an idea what like my biggest struggle is. But if I read through them, there's something that has extra weight that doesn't really quite make sense to me, then it's important to probably discern that there's more going on there. There's a reason that I'm looking at this, and it may actually not be you, right? This may be God telling you. And if you're someone that like has a hard time picking up on signals that God may be telling you, like most people, right? Then that just means that this is a trusting relationship. And you may not have a lot of trust, or you may not be able to take in those signals that God's sending you as much. And there could be all kinds of reasons for that. And one of them is practice. So we want you to look at something that has the most weight, because one, we don't want to train ourselves to always go for the low-lying fruit. I think that this is something that we do a lot in our lives.
And when you say low-hanging fruit, like what are you referring to there, Craig?
Yeah, so there may be something that I'm like, oh, like this is a struggle with God. And you know what? I think it's just that I need to pray more.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So that's low-lying fruit. And like maybe that's what I need to do. But if I'm looking at the list and that one doesn't jump out to me, well, that's just a symptom of a larger problem. What we're wanting to do here in the narrowing our focus is pick out the thing that is the most weight, that has the most punch. This is the thing that's causing the most distance. We want to attack the thing that's causing the most distance between us and Jesus. If we aren't attacking that thing that's the most distance, then we're actually not going to do some of the small things that we have to do that line up to closing that gap. So we don't have to go after that low-lying fruit. We don't have to, because if we start to do that and we start to train ourselves to do that, then we're actually robbing ourselves of the opportunity not only to close the distance the most distance, but it actually may not even be what God's asking us to go after first.
Right.
You don't have to build up the strength to go after something. That is an idea that we have that people have created that are outside of God. Right? God is our strength. God will provide for us.
Yeah.
So we want to go after the
Amen.
biggest things, because God is not, God's not raising a people to go after the easy things.
Right.
So we don't want to put ourselves in a position where that's what we're doing all the time. So when you look at these, you could pray on them, you could think on it, like what has the most weight? What feels like it's the most intense? What feels like God's asking you to deal with? Then we want to go after that. That's what this like narrowing your focus section is about.
Yeah. I mean, pretty simple. We just want you guys to find one specific thing to choose from maybe a list that you've created before. And it's all right, again, like we named in our last episode, if throughout the process in some of our next subsections here, if you figure out, maybe there was something else that had a deeper impact and I need to go back to this section and name them again and process what my body's feeling, and see if there really is something that has a bigger weight. Maybe I did choose the low-hanging fruit because it's what a Christian's supposed to do.
Right.
Or maybe I did choose the low-hanging fruit because this is a really bad thing and our culture looks down on it. But maybe that's not the thing that's really pushing you away from Jesus the most.
Right.
And sometimes it can be a really simple thing even that is culturally acceptable. Like something I struggle with that I named last session that I think is the one for me is my tendency to distract and not be present in the world, to distract myself with entertainment, to completely shut down and not have to think about all of the things that I would potentially be anxious about, and to kind of go into fairy tale land and live in another world and not be in reality. To have my mind being constantly engaged. And whenever I think about that one, I feel the weight. I feel the tension start to build up in my arms as I start to clench them, and a little bit in my fists as I almost don't want to relinquish that or even like acknowledge that, yeah, that's an issue that I have. Like I find myself wanting to clench my fist and hold on to it in some way, I notice. And I don't even want to admit that that's what I struggle with because, that's something that so many other people could probably relate to in some ways. And that everybody I think would dismiss as being, oh, that's fine. That's you resting. That's you doing what you need to do for yourself. Or you just really love stories or games. That's okay. And even though there's some truth to, yes, we need to rest, and there's some truth to, yes, it's good to love certain things or have interests, the way that I'm choosing to use it is to escape, to shut down, to avoid hard things, to avoid looking at my soul, and to avoid running to Jesus.
Right. Well, remember, the snake, with the original sin, there was some truth in what the snake said.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just a slight twist.
Yeah.
It's like that in our world all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. And I think that, another piece of this, narrowing your focus. So some of you want to do a really good job. Most of you probably really want to do a good job, and bless you for that. There's going to be some of you that are going to get really hung up on, I have to have the perfect statement here. I have to have the perfect thing. If you're one of those people, acknowledge that. That's just you, right? We love you. We encourage that because there is something special about you being able to go throughout the world with that. And this narrowing your focus, what we're going to work on later on as we start to go through some more of these steps in the process is trying to take this statement that you're narrowing here and adding depth to it. So, just to kind of give you a little sneak peek, right? The struggle that I talked about, like I struggle to be a joyful giver, there is more depth to this that we'll get through later on in the process where like there's a fear of a lack of abundance. There's a fear and how God may challenge me and I may not be able to meet that challenge. Yeah. And so like there is depth there, and it's okay in this narrowing your focus to like, we're just trying to pick one strand and we will deepen it later on, which may reveal more about it and more depth. That is okay with this. So some of you may have real trouble picking out one, and you guys may even notice that like as you listed stuff, there's some connecting pieces. That's okay. We're just asking you to choose the heaviest one and just know that we'll unpack that further later as we go through the process, because like most things, the things that cause distance, it's multifaceted, which means that we are going to have a multifaceted approach to this, but we want to pick one thing right now, because if we don't pick the one thing, then we're just going to be casting too wide a net. It's going to be too difficult, right? It's no different than the roots of a tree. We can follow the base down, and we need to start at that base and have one idea, and then it'll shoot out into those different roots that will go and start to address those pieces. So I just want to let you know that, because there's some of you that may be looking at like the list that you created and maybe like, well, hold on. There's some of these that are the same, or all these seem important. That's okay. Right? Yeah. There may be a connecting piece. We're going to make sure to get to that. This is not a reduction.
But don't feel the need to go deep yet. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
To figure out, well, what is it that I'm protecting whenever my body's doing this? We're going to get there. Right now, just try to notice the sensation and narrow down which of these is the heaviest for me.
And when you get that, then you can go on to the next step in the process, in which we will be like kind of trying to blow this up and trying to get more depth. Well, what I mean by blow this up, is we will be trying to work on getting a deeper sense of what this is. And that way, some of these thoughts and feelings that you're having there will be represented.
Absolutely.
When we go through this. Because again, we don't want to leave any stone unturned, and that will be a part of the process. And if you're already feeling that, then this is the right place for you.
Yeah. We're happy you guys are here choosing to walk through this with us. And as I said, at each of my clients that I think comes through the door to start talking about painful things, for you to even tune into this podcast, I think is a very courageous thing for you to do, to begin trying to do business with some of these areas in your life that that you've been holding on to and not relinquishing, and just wanting, even just making the effort now that you are ready to hand something over. That is courageous, and we thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this, to listening with us, and for trying to engage. We ask that if you have any questions, please email us. Ask us to speak more directly on something if you have any other questions. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and what's this workbook that they're talking about? Where are these questions at? You'll be able to find that in the show notes, and you'll be able to find our email in the show notes.
Yeah, link right below.
Yep. Okay. So again, like Matt said, thank you for joining us. We love you very much. And until next time, take care.
See you guys. Hey guys, thank you for tuning in and giving us a listen today to this episode of Handing It to Jesus. We are a not-for-profit organization, and we depend on the donations of people like yourself so that we can keep making podcast episodes like this, and so that we can continue making written content. And so we have provided for you a free workbook that you can find linked right below. You can also find linked our donation page right below. You can also find those links in our bio as well. We hope that through those donations that we are able to continue making more episodes, that we're able to continue making more written content so that you can hopefully grow closer in your walk with the Lord. We ask that you prayerfully consider partnering with us in that way, if God lays that on your heart.
Yeah, and a little more about that. I mean, this is something that I personally struggle with financially, in this like scarcity mindset that Jesus has been working on with me for quite some time. And maybe you're a person like me that's been suffering in that way, and where I see different things that I want, and it always seems like money is tight. And one of the things I want to let you know is that part of our walk with Jesus is that Jesus gets us uncomfortable around those things. And so like usually what this looks like for me is I have my eye on something new that I want. And then there's a effort, there is a mission, there is a front on the kingdom's effort, or something that somebody's doing that I want to put towards. And then I have that like little competition that ends up happening. It's like, all right, do I want to invest towards the kingdom, or do I want to go towards this product? And that's super common for Christians to, especially like in our society in today's day and age, to compete with. And so if you're hearing this today and maybe you feel led to give, maybe there's a movement in your heart, like Matt says, pray about that, take that to God, and act on it immediately. Immediately go to the donation, and whatever God lays on your heart, allow yourself to do that, because maybe God is actually calling you to move forward on this front, to actually give into this battle, this mission that we have here. And if you don't feel that call, that's okay too. You can still enjoy the content. Others may pave the way for you. There are most certainly times in my life where things that I really enjoy and that really help me, that others have paved the way for me. And that's okay. You can still enjoy the content. And God may wrestle with you or may call you to fight on this front in a different way or give in a different way to somebody else. Or maybe, like Matt said, it's actually just spreading the word. It's maybe telling somebody about our podcast. Maybe it's giving us a review in some way to be able to help other believers find this. There's so much content in the world and so many different things that maybe we consume maybe a little too much. And we just want to provide another avenue for believers to put the focus on Jesus, put the focus on that relationship, and to be able to spend that time, whether or not it's in the podcast or some of the written content we have or some of the even ideas that we have for the future. So thank you for joining us in that, whether or not it's you donating to us right now or whether it's you just letting other people know about us existing.
Right. Yeah. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Please subscribe, like, follow, share with your friends, talk about us with other people. We would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much again. And we love you. We will see you next time.